With Chainsman Chapter 208, the love life of Denji, it became even more complicated because just when you thought you could put all the Denji and Yoru pairings to bed, she does something at the end of the chapter that immediately makes you realize that Fujimoto might yet again be hinting at the complexity of Mitaka's heart and her sharing a body and a brain with a tsundere devil like Yoru, all while further cementing that when it comes to the tiers of power, the falling devil reigns supreme. And I think we all can agree that when it comes to Yoru in this chapter, she absolutely picked the wrong time possible to have her tsundere tendencies come out. So that being said, let's back things up and let's go through the chapter itself, breaking it down. So first, we have to start with primal fears and the themes of buried emotions and guilt-filled growth in general. So Chapter 208, in my opinion, is a masterclass when it comes to layering tension in the story, not just between the characters. That's basic writing itself, but instead, it's the fundamental forces that govern human nature itself. Instinct versus ideology, love versus survival, guilt versus redemption. All of this is being put on display in this chapter. As the chaos between the falling devil and Denji and Yoru is beginning to potentially reach a climax, if not a critical juncture, this chapter very quietly unveils the existential truth, which is that some devils are stronger not because they are more violent, but because their names represent fears that are embodied deep into the biological code of all conscious beings. This chapter doesn't just develop the story, it also reminds and reframes to us as readers how we should perceive the stakes in the Chainsaw Man universe, because as longtime fans of the series, we all know the stronger the fear, the stronger the devil itself is. And that brings us to what Fujimoto very quietly reminded us of, which is the hierarchy of fear. Falling versus war is put on full display. At the heart of this chapter, at least early on, it is the confrontation between the falling devil and Yoru. Yoru being the war devil, and as we saw at the end of the last chapter, she just let everything off and she thought she could do it. She thought she could beat the falling devil, and as we expected, it didn't work. This is what makes that clash so fascinating, is that it's a philosophical contrast between each of their domains. As the falling devil does coldly remark, the fear of falling, it is primal. It's not something taught. It's inherent. It's something that every living creature feels from the moment they become aware of gravity. The first time a child tries to walk and they fall and they bust their head, they're scared of falling after that. They become very aware of the danger that exists in this world, as well as their own mortality. You fall the wrong way, you can die. Even animals, they flinch at the sensation of falling. It is a subconscious survival-based fear that predates language, ideology, and society. And that's why this is a good transition to Yoru, because war is a fear that is basically a construct of society. While war itself is undoubtedly terrifying, it is also something that is man-made. There is no natural event that occurs where you say that war is occurring. It is always man-made. Even going back to the time where mankind was in clans and people were fighting over who first made the wheel, who had the bigger campfire, and etc. It was also something back then that was started by men. It requires intent, organization, and oftentimes nationalization, vengeance, or an ideology to take shape. While consequences of war are brutal, and it should not be downplayed, there are several wars going on right now. The fear of war, it is something that is taught. It is something that is inherited, but not through biological means. It is not biologically hardwired into you. War is something that you learn to embrace as you go through humanity. This explains why, despite Yoru's constant aggression in that battle, the falling devil remains calm and superior. Primal fears are foundational in the Chainsaw Man universe. There's a reason why they've never died in hell or on earth. The strength of the devil is directly tied to how deeply rooted in the fear of the psyche that particular fear is for the population as a whole. The falling devil's condensation, it isn't arrogance, it isn't even patronizing. It's just a universal truth. She embodies something more than war itself. This is an hierarchy of fear. Yoru is simply outmatched. And that brings me to another human emotion that Yoru is also feeling. That pause that she has in the chapter when she and Denji are in that room with that guy and it looks like that guy's gonna end up dying. When she paused, was it love or was it a survival instinct? One of the more narratively loaded moments in this chapter comes when Yoru is preparing to turn Denji into her second ultimate weapon, as she calls it. She's got her hand on his head, and there's this haunting sense of intimacy, one that is only broken when Mitaka suddenly regains control and she objects to his plan. Denji surprisingly does not. He accepts it. This is conflict. This is a key element to writing any story. Every good story needs conflict. What makes Yoru's decision to stop so poignant is that it suggests that it's something more than cold calculation. At face value, you might think, hey, maybe she realized she needed Denji alive in order to better take down the falling devil. However, I do want to kind of offer this contrast. This is the same war devil who once tried to weaponize anyone without any type of hesitation. But here she falters, she hesitates. And in Chainsaw Man, hesitation from devils, it is rare. And that is something revealing. Yoru shares a body with Mitaka, whose feelings for Denji have very quietly and openly been developing over the last tens of chapters. These two, they've gone on dates as we've seen. They fought side by side and they've seen each other at their lowest moments. And both times they're at their lowest moments, they just happen to be in the presence of the falling devil in part 2 of the story. Yoru may claim that she's a separate consciousness, but the boundaries between her and Mitaka, they are merging. We've seen it. And that emotional overlap is eventually going to completely overlap. It's inevitable. Just as Mitaka's anxiety and trauma, you could argue, have influenced Yoru's decisions in the past, her romantic attachment may now be clouding or coloring Yoru's judgment. Yoru might even feel something for Denji herself. In my opinion, even the paneling in the chapter supports this interpretation. The moment she touches Denji's head, there's a rare softness. In my opinion, it's not the typical Yoru demeanor. The line between manipulation and affection, it blurs here. Did she stop because this weapon would be ineffective against this enemy, or because she too has grown to care for Denji? In the bloody chaos that is the world of Chainsaw Man, this question, it lands like a whisper in a war zone, pun intended. It is quiet, but it is deafening. And speaking of deafening, Denji's character development is there very loudly as well. He's talking about sacrifice, and that is a moment of growth as well as a window into the guilt that he still feels. Denji agreeing to be turned into a weapon is perhaps one of the most emotionally loaded decisions in the series. This isn't the same Denji who once wanted nothing more than food and boobs and a bed, and in part 1 of the story, he thought he was going to get into Makima's panties. This is a Denji who is shaped by loss and betrayal and trauma. This is a boy who has lost Aki. He has lost power. He has lost Nayuta. He has to carry the bloodstains of those who he cares for while being denied the chance to properly mourn. His willingness to become a tool, literally, it speaks volumes. It's not about becoming a hero. It's not even about saving Mitaka or the world. It's really about atonement. Somewhere inside, Denji still believes that if he suffers, if he sacrificed, then maybe those deaths, they will have meant something. Maybe he doesn't feel as if he is worthy. Maybe he feels as if he will stop waking up to the ghost in his head if he allows Yoru to turn him into a weapon. This also shows growth. Denji is no longer running from guilt. He's attempting to carry it, even if it breaks him literally. Ironically, by offering to become a weapon, he is also rehumanizing himself. And one of the things we talked about here on the channel is how Chainsaw Man as a story has a tendency to dehumanize Denji. Now we're seeing the very slow and methodical rehumanizing of him. By the time this story is finished, Chainsaw Man is going to make Denji into one of the better new gen characters, in my opinion. And because Chainsaw Man is a series that so many people clip out of context, I feel like that's going to go over a lot of people's heads. But I can see what Fujimoto's doing here. I think he's not chasing thrills. He's seeking redemption. It's a concept that once would have been too abstract for him to fully understand, but he gets it now. And that brings me to the spear through the skull. That is a very symbolic and emotional moment here. Allow me to explain what I mean, because you're probably going, wait a second, we don't even know this guy that is in that room with them. How is that emotional? So allow me to paint the picture. This chapter ends abruptly and brutally, as you would expect with Chainsaw Man. Yoru is impaled through the skull as the Falling Devil's weapon finally catches up to them. The Falling Devil did say that she was only going to minor injure them, so Yoru's obviously alive. But this moment is jarring and symbolic, just as Yoru seems to hesitate for the first time, possibly due to love or a conflicted emotion. She is also punished immediately. In a story that has consistently portrayed affection and vulnerability as potential fatal flaws, this outcome, it reinforces a chilling truth. Emotional hesitation can get you killed in Chainsaw Man, but it also sets the stage for a potential larger reckoning. Will Mitaka, when this is over, blame herself for interfering? Will Yoru finally admit to an emotional depth? Finally admit to maybe she has feelings for Denji? And most importantly, what will Denji do next now that someone else was hurt in his presence? Chainsaw Man chapter 208, it isn't just an action-packed chapter. If you only focus on that, I feel like you're doing a disservice to the story. It is a philosophical bit of storytelling here, and it is disguised very brilliantly as a bloodbath. It reinforces the terrifying strength of primal fears, exposes the slow burn emotional development of Yoru and Denji, and it also gives us confirmation that Denji is undergoing the next step in his journey to reclaim his humanity. In a world where devils, they thrive on human terror, it turns out that the scariest thing of all might not be monsters, but the emotions that we don't fully understand. And it's going to make that moment where Denji, when he finally decides, is he going to embrace his human side or his devil side? It's going to make for a very satisfying payoff. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing, checking out more videos from Chainsaw Man by clicking here on the left, or check out other videos from the channel as well that deal with non-Chainsaw Man content.